Hi, in a recent video I made, there was in the comments section, Tariq from New Zealand reached out and asked if I would make a video on how to handle betrayal and thoughts of revenge. So this video is for you, Tariq. So I want to be really clear from the start. There is a difference between understanding why something happened. So for many people who were betrayed, they want to know, why was I betrayed? There's a difference between truly understanding why you were betrayed and the experience of actually being free from the pain from experiencing it. And oftentimes, people who are still in the middle of that very understandable pain will tune into a video like this and they'll hear an answer for how to understand what happened, and they'll be really frustrated because they'll say, well, that doesn't take away my pain. So I want to be super clear. There is a difference between understanding and actually experiencing freedom from that pain. Now, once you understand that, know this too. Even once you understand why it happened, you still have to go through the pain. But what I want you to hear right from the start is that overcoming betrayal and releasing yourself from thoughts of revenge is absolutely possible. We know from what the Buddha taught a long time ago that holding on to anger toward others is like picking up a hot coal to throw at them. You're going to burn yourself before you ever hurt them. And that's really important to understand. So again, this video is for people who are ready to truly understand what happened. I have said for nearly 25 years now that my job is to explain behavior. It's never to excuse it. And when we are betrayed, it hurts. It hurts deeply. And the reason why it's, I believe, important to understand why that betrayal happened is it helps protect us from potentially being betrayed again. For example, when we're young and we get into a relationship and there are obvious signs that the person wasn't faithful or wasn't going to be committed, but we just overlook those signs because what we believe is they're not what we want them to be, and would rather just keep our minds on making people into who we think they should be rather than accepting them for who they are. But when it comes to truly understanding your own situation, if you really want to understand what happened, one of the most effective ways to do that is to replay the events of what happened, but in terms of two inanimate objects. So for example, I take two chess pieces, and here's a king and a queen, and I say, okay, so this is exactly what happened. These two were in a relationship, and then whatever the details are that occurred. But I talk about it in a third-party perspective, because what my goal is, remember, is to truly understand. And again, and I'm only repeating this because I'm really well aware after doing this for a long time and working with countless people who have struggled with that intense pain, that when they hear it, they say, yeah, but this isn't making me feel better. Okay, again, this isn't a pill, it's not a quick fix. This is to understand truly why it happened. And the reality is that when you're in a relationship, or maybe you are betrayed at work, or maybe you're betrayed in a partnership, or whatever it is, when you're in a situation where you really want to see the person the way you think they should be, the more attached you are to needing the person to be who you think they should be, the less you're going to see who they actually are. And if you followed my channel at all, you know I talk a lot about the difference between the cartoon world, or our world of shoulds. People should think, feel, believe, and behave the way I think they should. And then the real world, how people actually think, feel, believe, and behave. And I've spent the better part of my career teaching people how to align their expectations with reality. the more prepared we are for reality, the more effectively we'll handle it. When it comes to understanding betrayal, there are reasons why people betray others. One of the most basic reasons why is that human beings have a tendency to want to maximize pleasure and minimize pain. So if if they're in a relationship with you and an opportunity comes up along the way for them to maximize their pleasure, then they might take that opportunity. It's hurtful because the person who feels betrayed often was convinced or believes or convinced him or herself that this person was committed and wouldn't do something like that. But I say they may have convinced themselves because, again, imagine from my side of the box, I have worked with people of all ages throughout my whole career, and oftentimes young people in junior high maybe, they decide they want to make somebody into someone else, and so they will create this image of who the other person is, and they will quite literally run with things the other person neither said nor did, and then they'll put that on them simply because they really wanted them to fit that criteria. And one of the most powerful exercises that takes a lot of emotional maturity and strength to do is to align your expectations with the reality of who someone is, and then put those in conjunction, often opposed to what you think that person should be. So to understand the betrayal, start with this. You're looking at the event from an outside perspective, and then you're saying, well, what led to what on each side? You see, we have a tendency to see our intentions, but other people only see our actions. So, for example, if you were in a relationship and you downplayed experiences frequently, like, oh, it's just my birthday, it's not a big deal, like, don't even worry about it, it's not a big deal. And then when the person doesn't do anything for you, you say, I can't believe you didn't do anything for me. Well, what you missed out on were your actions were saying, no, this isn't important. And then your intentions were, well, they'll just somehow magically think differently from what I'm telling them to think. And so it's really important, again, as you're stepping back to try to understand why the betrayal happened, you're doing it through the lens of a third party, almost like a bird's eye view, looking down on these two human beings. They interacted, and what led to what on each side. So in order to truly do that, it's important to put yourself behind the eyes of the other person. This is tough for us to do. It's really tough to do when we're experiencing pain from a broken relationship, where especially if we've been betrayed. But when you put yourself behind the eyes of the other person, the person who hurt you, then what you'll see is what they were seeing. For example, sometimes people make it really difficult to share things with them, and then they wonder why people don't want to share things with them. A common example is this. Imagine a parent who screams and yells or even hits a child who tells them something that they didn't want to hear, and then they wonder why that child wasn't honest the next time something came up. It's not the parent's fault. I'm not talking about that. So if you're stuck in an emotional spot right now, be mindful that I'm not justifying or excusing. Again, I'm only explaining why this might happen. If you tell someone something and they go off on you, then it makes sense, logically, why that person might not want to come tell you something again. Now, conversely, if you're in that other person's eyes and minds, you're behind their eyes, you're in their minds, and you may have done something that you tend to downplay. So if you're in your eyes, you say, well, I didn't mean to say this. Well, I didn't mean to do that. But from their eyes, they can't see what you meant or didn't mean to do. They can only see what you actually did. The more you understand what led to what, the more understanding you have. It doesn't mean you're going to say, oh, that's why. Oh, okay, it doesn't hurt anymore. It's still going to hurt. But when you can truly understand what happened, you'll have a better chance not to encounter the same thing in the next relationship, in the next partnership or business relationship or whatever it is. You have to learn from your experience of the role you played. And this is very difficult for people because oftentimes when they hear that they contributed to an interaction, if they're highly emotional, they think, so you're saying I caused the other person to do this? And that's not true at all. We don't cause people to do something or another, just like people don't cause you to do something or another. But people sure impact you and influence you to do certain things. And in the same way, you also impact and influence others to do something. So again, step outside of your hurt, only at least to learn from what the other person might have said or did, to step outside and really understand what they said or did from their perspective, not from your own. Lastly, I want to hit on this concept of revenge. Coming back to the idea that the Buddha shared, that holding on to anger is like picking up a hot coal to throw at someone else. You're going to burn yourself first. The more you dwell in thoughts of revenge, the more that becomes your reality. Our thoughts become our reality. If what you seek is vengeance or hurt or pain for others, then hurt and pain is what's in the front of your mind. But if what you really want to do is be healed and have a sense of peace inside, then make that your priority. What we focus on becomes our reality. In sports psychology, there's a basic teaching that if you were, for instance, a baseball player and you were going up to the plate, you don't go up to the plate saying, don't strike out, don't strike out, don't strike out, because the main word that's echoing through your brain is strike out. Instead, you go up to the plate and say, see the ball, hit the ball, hit the ball, hit the ball. And that becomes your reality. When it comes to anger and vengeance, the more you dwell upon, think about terrible things or bad things happening so the other person can feel your pain, the more you're perpetuating that pain. And I will tell you this, someone else experiencing pain doesn't take away your pain, it just adds to the pain in the world. What would be more helpful is if you were able to release the pain. That's most important, that you can release that pain and find a sense of peace. And please know this, understanding, even forgiving and letting go doesn't mean you have to continue in that relationship. It doesn't mean you have to say, okay, everything's fine, because that would be the opposite of learning from the experience. So forgiveness occurs for you to have that internal peace. And when you're able to forgive, you're able to let go of that pain and have a sense of peace. But remember, past behavior is the best predictor of future behavior. So if you sweep it under the rug and say it's okay, then the likelihood of it repeating is pretty high. So be mindful that understanding isn't condoning. Understanding doesn't mean you're released from the pain, but understanding does give you a very valuable piece of information to learn from so that you don't put yourself in a similar position in the future and instead learn from it. Be mindful what you're saying to yourself along the way, because you're absolutely listening. Until next time, as always, I wish you much peace.